I sure hope it does. I've noticed because, this month we started off talking about UFOs every night, and we're doing that all through November. But even last month, I had with some of the guests I have, noted people in the UFO field, they all seem bummed out because they pretty much had the feeling, well, maybe the first of the year it's going to break and we might get information. And now it's like everybody's just kind of like in the, blah mood.
Again, look, what we've been going through for the last two in the United States is not trivial. It's a really, really big deal. This constitutional crisis has affected everything in this country. There's almost no aspect of American life, both politics, state, federal, local level, projects, initiatives, you name it, that hasn't been impacted by this development. This happens. History is. It's like when 9/11 happened. 9/11, when that event takes place, and then the movement into the multiple wars that subsequent to that utterly changed the country, affected countless numbers of projects, initiative, derailed this, backburnered that. History does that to you. They were making some nice progress back in ancient times, and then somehow the Alexandria Library burned down. That was a pretty significant blow. So when it comes to getting things done and being in the public arena, you ride a roller coaster, and you're subject to the vicissitudes of history at any given moment. And so we just have to accept that and move forward and strategize accordingly.
Well, right now, too, Steve, there's so many negative things going on, like the tariffs, talk about, maybe war with China, like in 15 years, threats, we've been making to Russia making threats to us. I mean, it's really like the Cold War is like sprung up.
We are in an early stages of a sort of new Cold War. There's been some extraordinarily bad political policies going all the way back to 1964, but continuing after 1991. We've made mistake after mistake after mistake, and now we're starting to reap the results. This is unfortunate. We need to stop making mistakes and start getting it right. But as far as bad things happening, you want to talk bad things?
Well, we can.
Go to Yemen.
Yeah.
Go to Yemen. Visit Yemen. And you can see what really bad things look like.
Well, can you tell the listeners a little bit for they understand?
There is another proxy war going on in the country of Yemen between various factions, including some religious extremists, again, all springing from the Middle East policies that stretch way back, certainly particularly back to 2003. And Yemen has now become a focus. Unfortunately, in this case, they are challenging Saudi Arabia, which is backed by the United States and heavily armed by the United States. And Saudi Arabia is using those arms to decimate Yemen. They're blockading the ports, and between 8 and 15 million people are in starvation, in the process of starving to death, including several million children. You can find the pictures on the internet if you look. None of the candidates talked about it. None of the politicians bring it up. Again, it's almost everything other than the crisis we're in is being discussed. And so as we have been going through our political crisis with endless, repetitive reports on it by endless political journalists and political pundits and so forth, every day, hundreds, if not thousands, of children are starving to death in Yemen under incredible assault by a U.S. ally using U.S. weapons.
And
it's as bad as it gets. And after this storm has passed in the U.S., the tale of Yemen will start to emerge, to the utter shame of the American political class and to a certain degree the European political class. and to the Saudi Arabians, who really live this extraordinary charmed life where they're able to pretty much get away with anything, live like gods, and wreak a lot of havoc on the world. There's probably no greater region of pure, unadulterated hubris in human society right now than in the nation of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures like, children that look like they were starving to death, and I saw some pictures of,
They don't look like they're starving to death. They are starving.
They're starving to death. And what's really bad is the news media over here doesn't want to cover it, and they don't, really. And people don't realize how bad things are. A lot, I hate to say it, is because of our past policies with countries and what we've done and given support to wrong people has caused all this.
Look, those images, which you can find on the internet, are not good for ratings.
No.
On TV news shows that get 1 million viewers, 500,000 viewers, so they don't like to show them.
Yeah, that, I don't know. And you see things like that, and it's not just even there. It's a whole bunch of places right now where, people are suffering, and it's, again, politics. And I hate to say it, some of this politics is coming from, our capital, not even from our current president, but some of the past presidents that made wrong decisions, and people are paying for it.
The circumstances today that are going on in the world are the result of dysfunctional politics going back. The turning point for me in my assessment was 1964. And since 1964, which is now it's like 54 years, a half century, we have been in a steady decline towards greater and greater dysfunction, higher distrust, and a breakdown in institutions, resulting in a complete and utter waste of the extraordinary opportunity that came to the world when the Cold War came to an end with a relatively bloodless fashion. And the amount of stupidity, conceit, hubris, incompetence that went in to the decisions between 64 and today is staggering, but not unusual. I mean, if you look back through history, empire upon kingdom upon nation after nation have gone through similar periods where they simply, literally self-destruct. They annihilate themselves under primarily male-dominated, matriarchal oligarchies and what have you, and essentially drive their nations, their kingdoms, their empires literally into the ground. This has happened before. We don't expect it to happen now because we're so smart. We know so much. History is chronicled. We have it in our libraries. We even have it on video. We know so much, and yet we continue to repeat it anyway. But this started in 64. It hasn't played out yet. We had better right the ship pretty soon, or the consequences are going to be rather dramatically bad.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Yesterday, I got an email, and plus I talked to the officer who is deployed, at the border, and he said that a lot of his colleagues are at this point so fed up with our government right now that they feel that we shouldn't even be at the border, of Mexico right now. He's worried because of the pressure what's going on. He's worried that violence can break out where there's going to be a lot of deaths. Break out where? On the border. No, it's not going to happen. It's the circumstances with respect to the border has been blown up so far out of proportions
for political reasons that people have been rightfully concerned and frightened. But it's just political bilge. The truth of the matter is, it's not going to be particularly bad. There's going to be probably some controversy. There'll be some more foo-fa involving asylum requests and what have you. But no, we're not going to have bloodshed on the border. It doesn't mean that somebody may not get hurt. Every once in a while, somebody does get hurt. But all I can say is that American people have got to become far more discerning in their ability to distinguish between propaganda and truth, between facts and falsehoods. It's not easy. We have 300 and some million people, and they all have some education, but the amount varies dramatically. It's a complicated world. It's extremely difficult to deal with the massive fire hose of information that comes their way if they want to look at it. And so people are in a high state of confusion, misunderstanding, misrepresentation. And the propagandists right now are far more influential than they should be. And we have seen in the past, whenever propagandists reach a certain threshold of influencing the affairs of a nation state and or kingdom, usually what follows is the collapse of that nation.
I don't know. My concern was, after talking to him, what kind of where I'm a little bit nervous about this. I remember Kent State. All it took was one or two, National Guardsmen to panic, and they opened fire. And that's what I'm worried about here, because we had our leader make remarks, if they throw rocks, well, then, he basically said, well, then you can return fire. And that's where, where his concern was, that, he has what he said, even in his company, that troops, that they're really high stress. They don't want to be there.
Yeah.
And
this is not Kent State. This is not the vast Vietnam War protest, a chaotic circumstances of those times. This is a situation where Border Patrol individuals, some National Guard, and maybe some troops who are not allowed to get involved in civilian activities will be down and near the border as some people start to approach in a couple of months. This is not Kent State. Somebody may throw a rock over the fence, and it may fall at the feet of a soldier, or maybe even hit one on the head. They're not going to be people firing on these people. It's not going to happen. This is propaganda. This is internet bilge. But, this is kind of what we've had a lot of for some time now. And all I can say is I encourage people not to buy into that stuff, to engage a range of information sources. Don't become wedded to some ideological news operation. Try to do your best to get multiple points of view and not overreact, particularly when there's a highly political basis behind the source that you're dealing with. So again, there's not going to be a Kent State happening at the border of the United States. Not this month, not next month, not anytime soon.
Well, I hope you're right, because I don't want to see any bloodshed. What do you think the whole motive was to put these troops on the border?
100% political.
That's what I thought. That's the first thing that came in my mind. There was no actual reason in my mind why we had to do it. I mean, to the point, even I guess the Pentagon today even changed the name of it to, take the hype off of it.
Look, the Pentagon is caught. The Pentagon is caught in the middle on this. They're in a tough spot. They've already there's already been several statements from